Ho, ho, ho!
Bah! Humbug!
Hi, I'm Koko. This program is called Ho 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 Bah Humbug, as you saw in the intro. It's I wrote it back and produced it back in 2009 and performed it in 2009, 2010, and I believe 2011. Haven't done it in the last couple of years. And the program is basically talking about the trials and tribulations of the holidays, the stresses, the anxieties, the depressions, all the problems. Lots and lots of people have lots and lots of issues over the holidays. Understandably so, if you get the whole premise. I've broken this down into segments, and I'll cover them in about 5-minute chunks. It's nothing anywhere near the program, which I'll reproduce over the summer and put together as a package. It'll be a few hours long. But you'll get the gist of it, and I have some friends who have some certain issues that occurred in the last month or so, and hopefully some of these will address them specifically, indirectly, and hopefully it'll help them, and hopefully it'll help you. So, on with the next program. Hey, Koko here. Loneliness. Yeah, loneliness. Big problem around the holidays. People have expectations. Everybody's expected to be happy, be jolly, and quite a lot of other things going on. The primary issue is the fact that there's a lot of people who are lonely, who are depressed, who are stressed for one reason or another, and we'll get to those later on in the list. But there's some very unrealistic expectations that people have. Everything is supposed to be a certain way, and unfortunately, it's not. And if you believe it has to be, nothing has to be any particular way whatsoever. And the problem is most people believe it is. Family traditions. I'm Polish. And when I was a kid, the expectation was we would go to my Aunt Wanda's house for certain holidays. Christmas Eve was always it. It didn't matter. Food was served at 4:30. You weren't invited, you were expected. You had to be there. No matter what. Christmas Eve, had to be there. And I know if you're Italian or if you're Greek, I know the same kind of thing happens, where there's expectations that are, perhaps unrealistic. Which works great. But for a lot of people who have, are separated, who are divorced, in my case, both my parents have died. So basically I have my 2 kids, and we really don't have a tradition because we don't really have a traditional kind of a Christmassy kind of thing. My son and I are kind of revisiting that whole thing. So Christmas means different things to different people. But getting back to the expectations, you're expected to be happy, you're expected to be jolly, and you see all these people around you, and once again, there's all the competition in your life. People have stuff, you don't have stuff. You have this issue, you have that issue, which is coming up. And if you go to the sites, the list will be there. You'll have an idea. You can look at the different programs and the general overviews. But the bottom line of it is you have to learn to overcome. Now, stress, anxiety, depression, a lot of that is a state that you get yourself into. And I've addressed this many, many times. People choose to be miserable. People choose to be unhappy. People choose to be depressed. One of my many teachers says, ask a question, and I'm going to ask you. What does depression look like? If somebody is depressed, how do they look? Eyes down, body closed, kind of shruggy shoulders. You can tell somebody's depressed. They've done some research where they've had depressed people, chronically depressed, tragically, medicatedly depressed. And they had these people stand facing, facing the sun, arms out, big old goofy grin on their face, standing there, and it's impossible to be depressed. A friend of mine says it's impossible to be depressed when you're driving a snowmobile or a jet ski. Okay? Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's certain things. If you're active, if you're doing stuff, if you're running around with, with dogs or cats or kids or things like that, it's impossible to be depressed, but you've got to change your state. You have control over this. I go extensively into, being happy, and we'll go into that at some point in the future. But you have to alter your state. You have to decide to be not lonely. And the easiest way to not be lonely is to be with people. Because if you're by yourself, then you're alone. And if you're alone, you're lonely. Find friends. Find relatives. Go to, if you're on Facebook, there's lots of events going on. Just go meet people. Walk up to somebody and say, "Hi, my name is." There's a lot of things to do to not be lonely, but loneliness is a choice. Find your family, find your friends. Stop being lonely. You can do this. Ho, ho, ho. Bah, humbug.